It is Sunday, July the 2nd, 2017, Wrestleview Live, number 16 here on the front page of Wrestleview.com. Also on YouTube, searching Wrestleview or Wrestleview Radio, iTunes, SoundCloud, same thing, search Wrestleview Media. I am Adam Martin, editor-in-chief of Wrestleview.com. Welcome to the show. Didn't think I would be here talking about I want to say TNA, but they're not TNA. They were Impact Wrestling, but we saw a story on Friday that said, actually, we're going to be transitioning to Global Force Wrestling. So we'll try to talk about this and figure this one out. I am joined this evening, not by Doug Lackey. He'll be back a week from tonight for the Great Balls of Fire show. But I thought I would reach out to somebody who, obviously, I have a very, very rich podcasting history with. And tonight was all about 15 years in history and all this stuff. So I thought, why don't we make a phone call and see if this gentleman would be interested? And I am joined tonight by that dang old Trey Dawg from Wrestling News Live fame. I felt weird having to type from Wrestling News Live fame all week on Wrestleview, but it's true though, because
you brought me out of retirement for this.
I did. So how are you doing, sir? It's good to do another podcast with you.
I'm good. And, it's funny because I was thinking about this earlier. You can do 1 million podcasts. That's what they call it nowadays. Back in the days, internet radio. But you can do 1 million shows, and you can interview 1 million wrestlers. And, the one thing that never changes, even when you've been retired and you haven't done one of these in a long, long time, the one thing that butterflies literally minutes before you click live.
You got the butterflies?
And so, you're just kind of sitting here going, okay, well, we're getting ready to go. And you get those butterflies, and then you're like, oh, do I remember how to do this? Sure, I know how to do this. I've been doing this for years. And the funny thing is, Slammiversary have their 15th anniversary, which blows me away.
I know.
It just reminds you that you were doing this before you were doing this before TNA started.
Yeah.
You were doing this you were doing this before the weekly pay-per-views when they first started as a company. And to see a company have its 15th anniversary, you're like, God, I'm old.
Well, the other thing too is, and of course we're going to talk about the show tonight, but the other thing I was thinking about too is the fact that I first started doing wrestling radio with you 15 years ago this month. It was when Stone Cold Steve Austin walked out on the WWE. You were doing a show. It wasn't Lycos Talk Radio. It was Fan Talk, I believe. Mm-hmm. And I called into a segment, and it was a fan cast. Okay. And we've told this story a million times, but for people that have never heard the story, I called in, I talked with Trey, and you just kind of kept me on the line, and then we kept going. And then eventually you invited me on the next week and the next week after that. And then we just kept doing radio from that point on the internet. And then eventually that morphed into the Wrestling News Live thing with JSK. And then I joined the show, but we always covered TNA from the very, very get-go. And we were always kind of there when it went through different transitions. And I would say the first phase was the weekly Wednesday shows. And then the next phase was, they have Fox Sports Net in 2004. And then the next phase was, they have Spike TV in 2005. And that was a Saturday night time slot that everyone was kind of down on. And that eventually morphed into a Thursday night time slot. And then they got 2 hours and they were prime time and things were rocking and rolling. And we were still covering the product. And then, I guess the next phase, would you say like what, Hulk Hogan, Eric Bischoff era? That's probably the best way to transition to the next one. And then, there was rebranding, there was, stars coming in, stars leaving. And in the last year, we didn't even think that this promotion was going to be a thing. And it largely became irrelevant in the wrestling world, where you had the WWE network really taking off. You had some popularity growing with New Japan Pro Wrestling. You had obviously Ring of Honor starting to gain some popularity with Sinclair Broadcasting, but TNA largely became a production company that stopped touring. They stopped doing house shows, Trey. They were just doing, maybe 2 pay-per-views a year. They were doing all these one-night only shows that were throwaway shows, essentially. So they became this weird kind of production entity. And then, of course, there's all the backstage drama with Dixie Carter and paychecks being late, and then Billy Corgan getting involved, and now they're all gone, and this new company named Anthem owns the company, and Jeff Jarrett was brought back, and all the old names that were in the early days of TNA are back. And tonight was obviously we'll get into different aspects of the show tonight, Trey, but tonight was a weird kind of, and I'm getting feedback, Trey, so if you could kill the headset down a little bit. Sorry about that. I'm hearing it really loud. Tonight was a weird, it was like a nostalgia look back at this company. And I'm glad you're here because you were a big part of that. I mean, you were there since day one with that company.
Yeah, it was a good show tonight. And it was weird at times because there, when the opener was great, they showed all the history of, well, not all obviously, but they showed a lot of history in the opener for the pay-per-view. And I thought that was great. Something happened. Can't remember exactly what it was in the history or the timeline of Wrestling News Live, but something had happened that WWE, and I remember telling you and JSK at the time, hey, there's this new company and Jeff Jarrett is going to be in control. And I remember telling you guys, I want to get in on the ground floor with these guys and see if we can't pull some interviews from their talent roster, because they're going to need promotion. And about us, we're internet, and which ironically now is the big thing, but it wasn't then. And I remember saying we need to start interviewing some of these people from TNA wrestling, and it just took off from there. And then it was like we were getting, sometimes up to 3 interviews a show from their talent roster. But they've gone through a lot of changes. And I even mentioned it in the Fight.tv chat, which we'll get into that more later because it was a great experience. When, to me, the question was posed in the chat of all the phases that TNA and Impact Wrestling has been through and all the history of time with the company, what's your favorite part? And I remember being really a bigger fan of their product when they didn't have a TV deal, when they were internet only and Raven was the champion. Yeah. And it was shortly after that it kind of went south. And it was a deal where, Jeff Jarrett was not there. Dutch Mantell wasn't there. Scott D'Amore wasn't there. And you had just, at the end of the day, at one point, the lead singer of the Smashing Pumpkins was involved in this. That's just hard to wrap your head around. But that was who was, guiding this company. And it was really refreshing tonight. If this is their stamp on the product, if this is what they're saying, hey, this is us now going forward, promising. I think it was good to see them back tonight in full control. And I even, on the flip side of that, because I haven't watched Impact. I haven't watched it in probably a year and a half. Yeah. But while the pay-per-view was live on their vignettes before the matches, hearing EC3 say, I'm a Carter and this company needs me, that's a great tagline while he's there in that company. That is a great tagline. But it's great. It's great having Jeff Jarrett back. And I can remember at one point in time when Jarrett was in charge and this wasn't going well. It wasn't a great product to watch. And I remember bringing up the question to you guys on the show. At what point do we just say, hey, look, he's not trying to make this a rival to the WWE. He's just trying to give his friends in the business a paycheck.
Yeah, which I remember
having that conversation.
I think that was around 2010. I think the Hardcore Justice show for me was this like, okay, this is, and I think by that point Jeff was really starting to transition out of an executive role. He had still ownership, but he was starting that Ring Ka King thing in India with Dutch Mantell. And then within a year or two later, He was pretty much he was there, but he wasn't super as involved as he was before. And then a couple of years later, he left and started up Global Force Wrestling. But it really, I mean, tonight really is a culmination of, they took over in March, and since March they've been trying to redesign the path that they're taking, because they had a prior booking committee making decisions. A lot of those guys are completely gone from the company now. So you have some new people in positions they used to be in back in the day that are now navigating the ship, and they're trying to get to where they need to go. The one kind of kink in the armor, though, was this Global Force Wrestling thing. And there was a story on Friday in the Tennessean before this pay-per-view took place, and we'll get into the show here momentarily, but there's a lot of backstory before we get into the show tonight. There was a story that was in the Tennessean that basically said that they're going to officially transition from calling themselves Impact Wrestling or TNA to Global Force Wrestling. And a couple days before that, there was a press release that came out that said they had acquired the assets of Global Force Wrestling, which people assumed, okay, at some point that was going to happen because they were talking about a merger. They had GFW championship titles on the Pop TV show every week, on the Impact show. They crowned champions, which I thought was really weird. But then it was eventually leading down this path to, okay, we're going to have these unification matches and we're going to, put these belts together. But my assumption was it was always going to go back to being Impact Wrestling. There was that confusion where we're no longer TNA. They made that abundantly clear back in March, where TNA's dead. This promotion is no longer being referred to as TNA or Total Nonstop Action Wrestling. That's dead. We're Impact Wrestling. And then a couple days ago, this press release comes out that says we're transitioning to become Global Force Wrestling, more so because they want to try to distance themselves from all the chaos and the mistakes and all these things with Dixie Carter's regime and all the late payments and all these things. They're trying to get away from that, essentially. And tonight we didn't really get a concrete answer. I mean, every time that there was a championship match, Trey, I don't know if you noticed this, but they would always show the GFW graphic for that title, but they would never have like an Impact Wrestling graphic hit the screen about the tag team titles, about the world title, about the women's title. I can't remember if they did it for something for the X Division, because the X Division equivalent would have been the Next Gen title in GFW. But we're in this weird phase, and I thought Jeff Jarrett tonight, he cut a promo. I thought he was going to say something, but I guess they're going to wait maybe to do that at the television tapings that are coming up in the next few days that'll air in the next few weeks on Pop TV. But that really threw me for a loop, because I at no point was given any indication that they were going to drop the Impact Wrestling name, because they made it very clear back in March, we are sticking with the Impact name, but we're going to trudge forward. Now it's GFW. There was a question in the chat by Jamel Watson. Did Global Force ever have a television deal, a regular weekly show? No, they didn't. What they did was they toured ballparks. I went to a show locally here. And then at that point, they taped a bunch of television in Las Vegas. They never found an outlet. That footage has never been seen to this day outside of little clips that they put out on YouTube. Or if you look up somebody that maybe attended one of the TV tapings and recorded video. But yeah, there was nothing. There was no TV deal. There was nothing. Just there's no distribution on the internet. There was nothing. So it is what it was. And it was this weird entity that Jeff Jarrett started up. He tried doing, promotions with a lot of indie companies and companies overseas, but it never really took off. I mean, he did those live events and the attendance was dismal. I told Trey, I think there was maybe 40 to 50 people that showed up to the event I went to in this big 3,000 seat ballpark. So it was very disappointing, I'm sure. If you watch other videos of other GFW shows, it was hardly attended. So it was a rough time for Jeff. And then eventually he initially just met with Ed Nordholm to be a consultant, Trey. And then he eventually was just hired back to where, but it's a really strange thing. He started someplace with his dad, found the Panda Energy investor, was eventually pushed out, and now he's back. And it's just tonight was kind of that culmination and that surreal moment where all of a sudden he's back in power, and this is the new regime, Trey.
It's a good full circle for him in a way, because here's the thing, and I may be wrong. Again, this is where, when I said earlier in the show, do you still remember how to do this? Back in the day when I was doing this every week, and when you were doing this every week, there was this thing that you did called research, and you actually stayed in the know. I don't do that anymore, so I may be speaking way out of left field here, but I remember a time when, and Jarrett was still there. I want to say, I remember like being backstage at a TNA show, and you could just see that plate, and that was with his last wife before she passed away and everything. And you could just see that, you know, he really had a lot of irons and a lot of fires and a lot of things to take care of and do in his personal life. And you could just see that, you know, it wasn't the same fire as he had when he was there originally in the beginning. And if memory serves me right, and I may be wrong, but didn't he leave over the Kurt Angle being the baby of the company? And
yes, he did. And there was,
he was dating Karen.
Yeah, there was,
and it just went south from there for Jeff.
Yeah, there was a moment where, and it was a little awkward, where his wife passed away, and he got into a relationship with Kurt Angle's wife. I don't know if they were still married at the time or they were in the process of divorcing. And he got into a relationship with Karen, and that created some backstage tension. So eventually Jeff was told to go home. So he retained his role with the company. He just wasn't there with them anymore. He was eventually brought back, and they brought that story, that, you know, that real life situation to storyline where they had, you know, the Jeff and Karen wedding many years ago. But yeah, that was a messy situation for a lot of people backstage, which I think was like 2010, 2011-ish, around that time, maybe 2009, maybe a little bit earlier than that. But yeah, it was, and there was a lot of allegations about what he had been doing while he was married before his wife passed away. I don't know if any of it's true, so I've never really, you know, I don't really think we need to go there. But yeah, that was...
But the point that I was making is that, you know, it's been a roller coaster for Jeff. I mean, he was the founder. Then he basically, again, to my knowledge, I'm not 100%, but I think there was a funding issue. He reached out to Dixie Carter, who then brought in Panda Energy and the money to keep the company afloat. Then Jeff left. There was the, you know, obviously the Kurt, Karen, Jeff triangle. Jeff left. Jeff came back, I think, for the Hall of Fame thing.
Yeah, he was brought back to TV as like a character, and he did some in-ring stuff. But then it just kind of, I don't know. He was still there, and then he started doing outside projects. He tried doing like I can't remember the name of it was for the Speed Network, where they tried to do like wrestling and like a NASCAR kind of presentation, where really fast wrestling with really fast cars, and that never got anything about that. I can't remember the name of it, but I remember seeing tapings for it, and it never took off. I don't think it ever got a TV deal or anything like that. And then he got the Ring Ka-King thing in India it was on the air for at least a season, I think, because at the time the India market was really starting to blow up, and it still is a very big market for wrestling. But yeah, he was just kind of transitioning in and out, and then eventually he just left, and then he announced Global Force Wrestling and took his sweet time. Oh boy, did he take his time with that promotion. I mean,
he did too. He was in no big hurry. I don't know if that was all up to him or his fault, or it was other things at play. But he, you know, founded the Global Force Wrestling thing. I know at one point he hit promotion for that Hot and Heavy and was doing all kinds of interviews and appearances and stuff like that, and it just never took off. And like you said, they did all this taping in Vegas for, you know, a show that never aired, never struck a deal. And, you know, and I don't want this to be the dark, disgusting past of TNA, but, you know, that brings us back to where we are now, where he's back in control. He's got Dutch Mantel back. Scott D'Amore's back. You know, to me, I enjoyed the show tonight. I'm reading in the chat, and, you know, people are saying that the show was bullshit. They didn't like it. Slammiversary was horrible. The main event was a huge waste of time and so predictable. As far as predictability goes, I don't know. I can't really say because I haven't watched it in a year and a half, so I didn't know what to predict. That was probably why I enjoyed it, because I didn't know what to expect.
And I told you I was not a regular viewer of the I mean, I would watch stuff on YouTube, but I was not watching the Pop TV show very often. I definitely was not watching pay-per-views. So it was a lot of these talents were new to me. That very first opening tag match, I had really no idea who I was watching. I was aware of the new rebooted LAX, but I had no idea who the Pro Wrestling Noah guys were. Had no idea who the AAA guys were. I kind of knew who the Crash guys were because of the fact that they had been used at recent TV tapings, but there was a lot on the show. And generally what I do, the bottom line when we do this, Trey, is it's a hangout, it's a chill, it's a conversation. I by no means am interested in breaking the show down match by match because I think that's a total waste of time, and every wrestling podcast does that.
I always hated that anyway.
So the goal is, to me, have a conversation about the show, and to me I would rather focus on the stuff that I enjoyed first, and then maybe we can work our way backwards if there's something that just kind of that you didn't think was that great.
The first thing I want to throw out there, first and foremost, this was my first foray into the Fight.tv stuff.
Yes.
Adam messaged me this morning and said, hey, Fight.tv is where you're going to want to get this to watch it online. We did that. And I started the show for the first half of the match in full screen mode.
Me too. Well, I did full screen mode the whole time, but you're going to have to talk to me about the chat experience.
Yeah, I was in full screen mode. And it wasn't until you messaged me to say, hey, are you watching? How is everything on your end? That I minimized the full screen to answer you. And when I did, I saw there was a chat like we have here on our YouTube.
Yeah.
There was a live chat going with the show on Fight.tv. And they had Fight.tv moderators in the chat, obviously. And the cool thing to me was, like, before and after matches, wrestlers from the show were coming into the chat room to chat with the people watching the show.
Mm-hmm.
Everything in the long history of TNA where you could say, well, they screwed that up, but they were so close to having a great idea. This one I thought they nailed. It's the first time I've ever watched a pay-per-view this way. It was the first time I'd ever been to Fight.tv in my life. The chat itself was very relaxed. It was entertaining. It was fun to talk about what we were watching, the history of TNA, Impact, Global Force as we were watching it go down. Reminiscing about favorite moments in TNA history with the chat, reminiscing about favorite matches ever in the TNA chat. SoCal Val was in there the whole show. She chatted with everybody the whole show, which was amazing. I thought that was really cool. Fun.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you, like, the topic of favorite match in TNA history popped up. I said Samoa Joe, Christopher Daniels, AJ Styles in the Stop Kicking Me match that we were there live for.
Yeah.
3 or 4 people said the same match. Elix Skipper walking the cage against America's Most Wanted. That was my second match. You've been watching, and there were a lot of people that were like, since day one, and this even got brought up, and surprisingly, ironically, you won't believe this, but it was not brought up by yours truly, but Lollipop dancing in the cage on the original weekly episodes.
Oh God, I forgot all about that one.
Yeah, I was like, holy shit, that's a blast from the past, and a name I haven't heard in forever. I totally forgot about that.
Mm-hmm.
But to me, that made it fun. And regardless of whether you're going to come in here and troll and hate on TNA or let's laugh at TNA or whatever, I don't care. It's ridiculous. But if you're looking for a good experience, that was it. And yeah, there were trolls. There were trolls that came in to talk shit on TNA. But the thing about trolls is if you just don't reply or you don't give them the attention that they're looking for, they go away.
They tend to walk away.
And I mean, there were a few people that were like, oh, get the hell out, go away, shit like that. But for the most part, the trolls didn't get any attention, so they bailed. And it was a good experience. It was fun. It was a very fun pay-per-view, reliving the history of that company with like-minded fans while watching the show. And like I said, Eddie Edwards was in chat. His wife was in chat. SoCal Val was in chat the whole show. Josh Matthews was in chat. His name on the chat was the GOAT. It was great. He was trolling people. It was funny.
Yeah, that's what he does.
Trying to think of who else stopped. Moose stopped by in chat.
See, I had no idea this stuff was happening because I had it full screen and I was completely, because to me, I saw the chat and I was like, oh, great. That's just going to be filled with trolls and people just,
Eli Drake was in chat.
Yeah. Well, at least that was a good experience. I had no idea that stuff was going on.
It was just fun. It was just interesting. Now, here's the thing. Would it be that much fun when you're not doing a trip down memory lane?
No, probably not.
Probably not. But I just have to give a shout out to Fight.tv, and the people that were in the chat were actually fun to hang out with.
You were talking about some of the memorable moments, and I busted out the old Unbreakable DVD. That was the show we went to. Yeah, we went there in Orlando with JSK, and we got to see the highly regarded triple threat match with AJ Styles, Christopher Daniels, and Samoa Joe. But I thought I would bust that out and set that up in the background because that was the show we were all over back in the day.
We walked backstage afterwards and saw Raven getting stitches.
We saw Raven getting stitches, and they were also in the process of getting stuff ready for the Spike TV debut. So we saw some early banners, and we saw like stuff on the walls, and you could see all the old logos and stuff. And it was pretty cool to go back there. And we got to ride in a car with Rhino on the way to the airport, or the hotel. That was by the way, the hotel that they did that shot at, was that the hotel we were at? It looked very familiar. The hotel that all the talent always stays at.
It did look like the pool where what's his name that did the Canadian Destroyer? What was his name? I can't think of his name off the top of my head.
Petey Williams, yeah.
Remember he had all those camouflage underwear and he stripped down to his underwear and jumped in the pool, and I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah, okay. That was a party with all the wrestlers. So I'm gonna focus on the stuff that I thought I was really positive about, and then we can fill in the gaps as we go. But first of all, incredibly impressed with DeAngelo Williams. He is he's a NFL free agent. He was with the Carolina Panthers, correct, if I'm not mistaken. What position did he play? Was he
running back?
Running back. Okay. So he's a free agent right now. And when they do these, we're going to bring in a sports guy thing. We've seen this a lot in TNA, and a lot of times it fucking sucks. And it's just not good. And it's just their way of getting on Sports Center, and it's just, I don't know. It's just not, it doesn't do a lot. Holy shit, was DeAngelo Williams good in the ring.
Yeah,
not like he hit like a move or two, and everything he did was good. Obviously the finish got botched. That wasn't his fault. He just jumped a little too far, and they tried to have him do a splash off the top rope and break a table, and he just kind of, he jumped it and went a little far. But every move he hit, Trey, was crisp. I do the crisp, the Jeff Garcia, we always said. It was just well executed. He looked really good in the ring. He didn't get tired because a lot of those guys get blown up after they're in the ring doing stuff, and it looked really, really good. I was very impressed with him tonight.
And an interesting note on DeAngelo Williams, he and his wife, they had a fully themed Walking Dead wedding.
What?
Yes.
That's interesting.
If you didn't know that, now you know. And I even said, speaking of that chat that was going on Fight.tv, Moose came in the chat and asked, hey guys, what'd you think of the match? I'll answer any questions. And I said, congratulations, Moose. 2017 for professional wrestling to finally find an athlete that could actually wrestle in the ring and wasn't a joke.
Yeah, that's true. They really did. I don't know if he had experience prior to this, but man, he looked right at home inside the ring. So I was very, very, very impressed with.
I mean, you got to wonder if he doesn't sign a deal with the NFL and has to stay out of the NFL this year if he doesn't pursue this.
He might. I mean, honestly, he'd have a future. I mean, obviously, he's used to a lot of money. So I mean, obviously, there's not a ton of, especially in this company at the moment. But I mean, it's a start unless he's saved money well. But he definitely has a future. So I definitely wanted to talk about that because I was very impressed with him.
And speaking of that DVD over your shoulder there,
yeah,
that was when we met in person.
I'm sorry, your audio. Say that again. Your audio dropped out.
That was when we met James Mitchell in person for the first time.
That was, and he made a surprise appearance on the pay-per-view tonight, which we'll talk about because I was not expecting that one at all, to see him show up all smiley and everything.
I mean, if I had to say one thing, and no pay-per-view ever is a home run every... there's going to be spots where you're like, oh, well, I didn't care much for that.
Mm-hmm.
If there was any knock to me on this pay-per-view, and again, you got to take it from my aspect of having not watched this product in a year and a half, having really not watched wrestling in 6 months, period, no matter what promotion, and jumping right back into it with the nostalgia feel of Slammiversary, Slammiversary 15 and all this. So you got to look at it through my eyes. But if there was one knock on this pay-per-view, and again, it was 3 hours. I mean, it wasn't like they were trying to fill time. They were. I think Jarrett's spot was cut short due to time, probably. But the only thing that I really gave a knock on this show was I'd like to have seen more of the guys from the old days, the old TNA weekly pay-per-view days, or the Fox Sports News days, or Fox Sports more of the old school people, you know, and sprinkle them throughout the show like they did in that.
Which they kind of did do. I mean, honestly, and I was going to transition into the James Storm EC3 match. I mean, you had that in the video package, the emphasis on the fact that James had been in this company since day one, back when he was shooting the fake pistols with the pop rod, the little pop pop. When you remember, he used to get up on the on the turnbuckle with the guns and pop 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 pop. It was so cheesy, but he's been with the company now. Granted, there was a stint where he left and did a brief little time in NXT, and then he decided to go with a higher downside with TNA instead of sticking with NXT with the possibility of getting a deal. And a lot of people question why he would do that, where he had that in with NXT. And man, you know, a lot of Eric Young, Bobby Roode, Samoa Joe, a lot of Austin Aries, a lot of these guys took the low end deal knowing that the upside was you could get a main roster spot and you know, go on. But James decided to go with the money, stuck with the company, and he's in this feud with EC3, and they're really emphasizing, you know, his history and that he wants to become world champion again. But EC3 was the one to ruin that. I thought they had a really good match. Like the leather strap thing is really hit and miss with me sometimes, but I liked the creative stuff they did where, you know, Storm was kind of messing with him and handcuffed him to the corner. I laughed pretty hard when EC3 yelled to "eat my ass" at him, and then he'd spit in James's.
Yeah, I was thinking about it. Did he just yell "eat my ass"? And then I looked at the Facebook group, and he just said "eat my ass."
He totally did. It was, and there's aspects that we just don't get with. And I hate to make the WWE comparison, but we just don't get to like hear people yell "eat my ass" in WWE because of the level of the programming. Not that I'm going to complain about that I want people to yell things like that, but it's just, it adds kind of to the presentation a little bit. So I was really impressed with the match that they had and the stipulation, and they just, the only thing that I thought was a little off was they were trying to tell the story that Storm got tossed into a ring post and then it dazed him. So then later in the match, like towards the end, he just collapsed, and then EC3 was able to hit I think he hit like a hook driver or something like that, and then he just won the match. So apparently James Storm has a concussion, and so that kind of threw me off. Where that is the one time that sometimes the people that make decisions in this company, they'll do something and like the match
overthink it.
They really overthink it. Like the match is going really well, the transitions are good, they're using the stipulation well, and then they say, "Oh, let's just have him collapse." It's like, I don't know. I wasn't a big fan.
He was perfectly fine, and then he did the flare flop and was down, knocked out cold.
Yeah, it was weird. I didn't really like that so much, but I didn't.
Yeah, I didn't care for the ending, but I can tell you this, and I brought this up in that chat. Remember back when America's Most Wanted had that strap match at the Asylum in Nashville?
Yes, that was Simon Diamond
JSK and I were there.
Was it Simon Diamond and Johnny Swinger, I think?
Yes. We went out and had drinks later that night. But I just remembered both those guys, when they met us in the parking lot, they didn't have shirts on. And the whelps on their back from those straps was unreal. And they were in pain all night. And I remember when the match started tonight, I was like, oh boy.
Yeah.
regardless of who wins and loses this motherfucker, there's gonna be some sore folks tomorrow. Somebody's sleeping on their stomach tonight. I'm telling you that much.
Well, speaking of that,
and then EC3 took like 31 shots from the strap at one spot,
right in the corner. He took some nasty looking spots, so that was kind of awkward. But the finish was awkward. But they had a lot of fun in the match, so I enjoyed that. And what was interesting too was the match placement tonight, where they knew there was going to be a lot of this, you know, I hate to call it garbage wrestling, but it's a lot of stipulation wrestling. So you got a lot of, you know, weapons and they decided to book the strap match right before the Scott Steiner, Josh Matthews versus Joseph Park, Jeremy Borash tag. And earlier in the night, they did this video package where they basically said, oh, by the way, it's under no DQ rules. And at that point, you kind of knew, okay, Abyss is somehow going to be introduced into this match, and there'll be, you know, crazy shit. What I did not expect, Trey, was they did kind of a Matt Hardy, Jeff Hardy, Broken Universe kind of esque backstage thing where they brawl to the back and Scott Steiner and Josh Matthews get in a golf cart, and Scott Steiner was just consistently yelling that he wanted to get those fat asses, and he just kept yelling fat asses the whole time. And he was just, I think they were telling him like, let's play off the YouTube popularity of all your goofy promos. But they chased Jeremy Borash and Joseph Park in a golf cart, and then
when this first happened, when they first went at the back and it shifted from live to that taped looking footage, I went, oh.
Yeah, I got nervous too.
I was like, this is where they fuck up, because they've been so solid up to this point.
Yeah.
This is where they fuck it up. But then, go ahead.
Well, it continued with like Steiner and Matthews getting sprayed with a fire extinguisher by Borash and Joseph Park, and then they decide to get in a car and they put these like handheld cameras, and you see like the fire extinguisher all over the face of Steiner and Matthews, and they're yelling.
Hey, pop, high five.
Pretty much. And he's like, hey, Josh, I think this fire extinguisher made my teeth really white. And they're doing silly shit. And then they somehow get into like
tapioca.
There's like, yeah, he said, it tastes like tapioca. And then they get into like a portion of Orlando where like there's hotels, where we've been around that area. So we kind of know that area. And fucking like Borash and Matthews are like wrestling in a pool, and then like Shark Boy shows up and he's doing all shell, yeah, and he's swimming and he bites the ass of Josh Matthews, and like JB did like a swanton bomb into the pool, and then Steiner and Joseph Park like are brawling, and then all of a sudden Joseph Park gets tossed into a door, and then James Mitchell shows up with the Abyss mask, and that got a big pop, a big reaction. And then all of a sudden they're just back inside the impact zone, and you knew kind of what it would. Yes, it was a little predictable. What I did not expect, Trey, was to see Josh Matthews take a thumbtack spot where he got black hole slammed on these thumbtacks when Abyss came back, and then to see JB go up to the top rope, and I'm thinking, okay, they're gonna like drag Josh Matthews away from the thumbtacks, but
that's what I thought. Yeah,
but fucking Borash gets up on the top rope and takes a splash over Matthews, and literally his hands, both hands, smash into the thumbtacks, and you could see the tacks like right away. And that's how the match finished, and you could see all the blood coming out of JB's hands, and Abyss is hugging him, and James Mitchell and Shark Boy are all celebrating, but I was really not expecting JB and Josh Matthews to take a bump like that. So I give them a lot of credit, a lot of props for that.
And it's funny because I follow James Mitchell on Facebook and Twitter, and we've talked a few times since the Orlando trip. Not a lot, but a few times. He wished me happy birthday recently. So I knew he was bald. I knew he'd shaved his head. But when I saw through the wood, which was like the door thing, I thought he's gonna have an incredible Hulk moment where he's just gonna start, changing into Abyss.
Yeah.
And then when I saw the fog and the shoes and the red pants walking down the street, I was like, oh my God.
It was cool.
That is James Mitchell. And then he was holding that new Abyss mask, which is not the old original one, but it's a newer one. And he was like, I couldn't hear what he was saying because of the crowd pop.
Yeah.
But it was something along the lines of, it's time to become the Abyss.
Yeah, it was very loud.
And when he walked out in the impact zone, the first thing he did was that thumb thing for the weapon of mass destruction, which is what he used to call Abyss. And when Abyss's old music hit, dun, 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 everybody went nuts.
Yeah, it was cool.
Great. It was great.
It was really, really well
I'd like
done.
to have seen more of that kind of stuff sprinkled throughout that show.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know who they could have gotten.
Just depends.
Nostalgic trip.
Yeah, I mean, and the thing is, if you run the risk of too much nostalgia, because here's the one thing that was the biggest criticism about the first Regime show, which was back like early March, was that there was too many references to the past, and there's too much references to guys that used to be there versus the people that were there. So the biggest complaint was they're mentioning WWE too much. They're mentioning Samoa Joe, AJ Styles, Bobby Roode, Eric Young, Kevin Nash, the Dudleys, all these guys that used to be there that aren't there anymore, and there was too much attention being put on, okay, it used to be really good, Trey. It used to be really awesome, and now it's not anymore. And so people were like, I don't know if I like that many references to the past, but I liked the reintroduction of characters that we have not seen for a long time in this company, like a James Mitchell, like a Shark Boy, because I think you risk overdoing that too much, and then people get a little turned off by it. So I thought they did just enough to kind of whet your appetite with that. So,
and before we go any further, let's talk about Don West and what's his name, Robert Flores.
Robert Flores, yeah, he used to be on ESPN. Now he's on the MLB, and
chat on Fight.tv that was just trolling the fuck out of those guys.
Oh,
and I
really?
thought, you know what? They did great. That was refreshing.
They did a phenomenal job. They really, because I'm used to hearing, JB, Josh Matthews, and the Pope. Trey does the best Pope impression I've ever heard in my life.
Yeah, Daddy. I haven't done it in a long time.
I know, but it was really good. It was really good, but I'm not a big fan of especially Josh Matthews, and even JB. I feel like JB's better in the ring announcer backstage kind of territory. When he gets on commentary, he gets very over the top, and I'm not a fan. So when I heard, and I know a lot of people are very hard on Don West, and I totally understand because he's over the top, he's ridiculous, but that's why he was hired in the first place. Was the wrestlers would basically be sitting around, and you had this story explained to you many times, of just finding it hilarious of watching Don West on infomercials trying to sell stuff. And they went, man, what if we took that energy and dropped it into wrestling? And yes, he's not your typical wrestling commentator, but I think he complements anybody that he works with well. And I thought Robert Flores did a phenomenal job tonight. It was refreshing. It was a different sound. It was a different presentation. We didn't have JB and Josh Matthews arguing on commentary the whole time. And that to me was the one flaw, is that you gave me a glimpse of what it could be, and you're going to go right back to how you had it before the show tonight, which is most likely going to be Josh Matthews, the Pope, and the Pope's not bad, honestly, but the three-man team, I don't know if Borash is out or in, or I don't know if Matthews is out now. They didn't really make that clear. But yeah, I thought Don West and Robert Flores did a really good job tonight. So I can't imagine. I mean, some people just really, really dislike Don West, Trey. So they're just going to be,
I agree. So, I just opened up my wallet and bought a bunch of shit during the pay-per-view with him screaming at me. I just felt like I needed to buy a bunch of fucking shit online.
I know, he's fun.
It was great.
He's fun. He's good. I enjoy him.
I just want Don West one time on a 2 count to go, Great Odin's Raven.
Great Odin's Raven. I do miss I can't believe that. What was his go-to line? I can't believe I've just seen that. Or he just used
and the thing is, it's like somebody mentioned in that chat, they're like, Don West, for like him or hate him, he makes everything feel important.
He does. He does the "You've got to be kidding me" line, which is the go-to Don West line. The "You've got to be kidding me."
It's the vintage Don West line.
It's the vintage one. So I thought they did fine tonight. So I had no issues with it. Another match that really impressed me was Rosemary and Sienna, and I haven't seen a ton of Sienna. I'm pretty new with her. She's been
first time for me.
She's been with the company, I think, for over a year now. So she's newer to me, but if people, there's wrestling fans that are hardcore about women's wrestling that had seen her prior to this, but, I've been familiar with Rosemary because she's been doing the stuff, with the company for well over a year now with the Decay, back when they had Crazy Steve and Abyss. But now her entrance, I'm talking about Rosemary's entrance. How awesome was that? I said
I felt like I just paid for a TNA pay-per-view, and then all of a sudden a Rob Zombie video shoot broke out.
It was so good. What they did was, they had these girls come out dressed up kind of like scary zombies that you would see at like Universal Studios.
Like clown zombies, really.
Clown zombies, yeah. And they were crawling out on the ramp, and then as she walked out and the smoke cleared, she had this really creepy kind of skeleton mask on, and they were all reaching up at her, and then she slowly peeled the mask away, and her music, her entrance. I think LAX probably has the best entrance in the company right now. We'll talk about that.
Hands down.
But Rosemary, man, her presentation, the character, just like the little subtle nuances she does during the matches where she screams.
I
or
never
like,
would have thought her as a babyface would have worked that well. I enjoyed the shit out of it tonight.
It works incredibly well, and like,
the girl was the pinkies up thing. I think she stole that from Bruno Mars.
Yeah, Sienna does the pinkies up thing where she's trying to be como. I get a little, people call her the queen, and then I get the Charlotte. You know, I'm like, it's a little close, and maybe she was doing it before Charlotte, so I have no context, and someone will send me an angry tweet about how I'm an asshole, and I should know that.
I don't know who the other chick was that came out to ringside, but I was like, oh, my ex-girlfriend showed up at the fucking pay-per-view. Great.
So that was Laurel Van Ness, who you might remember was the chick they had on WWE television who supposedly cheated with Daniel Bryan, and they tried to do some storyline, and it flopped, and it was stupid. But she did this gimmick where she was trying to get married to this guy named Braxton Sutter, and he left her at the altar and went with another girl. This was back when Maria and Mike Bennett were with the company. So since
that didn't last very long.
So since this like wedding segment, she's continued to wear a wedding dress and smeared lipstick and be crazy because she was left at the altar. That's kind of like the gimmick. I'm not a big fan of it. A lot of people like it. It doesn't do much for me. It's a little over. I mean, I know wrestling's over the top, so I shouldn't take it too seriously. But I don't know. Sometimes the character acting gets a little hokey for me. But I thought Rosemary and Sienna did a good job tonight. I was kind of surprised they went with Sienna.
My thing with Sienna was, while I was watching this match, my thing with Sienna was this. If she's the queen and it's the pinkies up thing, why does she look so dirty and disheveled?
I know. She's kind of like a rougher, like she has like the background of like, I'm in mixed martial arts and I've been training, and yeah. I just didn't
think that, because I don't know anything about her, so that was my first time to ever see her do anything.
Or she wears like she wears the black lipstick, you know, and she looks very, she's very, rough looking. Like, she looked like she'd, walk up and punch you in the face kind of thing. She doesn't look like the queen. Like Charlotte looks, walks out and has the, the over the top robes and, sequins and just, blonde hair. And Sienna's like the total opposite of that. So, but now she's the unified champion, Trey, of which we'll maybe have more details determined in the coming days. But I did want to talk about that match. I like that. And then the main event, we'll fill in other gaps because the rest of the show I wasn't really big on. I'm just focusing on the stuff that I liked. But
it's always about you and what you like.
It's always about me, what I like, and then we'll squeeze into some of your thoughts. But
not a big deal here.
I was very curious how this main event was going to go because there's. And it was weird. They had Jeff Jarrett come out, cut a promo, thank everybody, whoever bought a T-shirt, a pay-per-view, a ticket, whatever.
For putting mashed potatoes on his table.
Yes, for putting groceries on the Jarrett family table. And then did you find it odd that he kind of set this weird bar for the main event where he said, you guys better
get in here and kick ass, because if you don't.
Yeah. And what was the so what if they didn't? Like, what would happen then? Like, I didn't understand the whole
Yeah, what are the consequences if they don't? Oh, they'll be ridiculed on the internet. Well, they're going to be ridiculed anyway, so it doesn't matter.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. They're going to get killed.
I remember when this match started, I had said to SoCal Val, I was like, this is a tough call here. I said, this really tells you where the direction of the company wants to go. Do they want to go with, Lashley, the big athletic monster looking guy? Or do they want to, with the MMA background and the WWE background, or do they want to go with Alberto, who's got the pedigree, the kind of the history and the lineage and all that as far as the two guys go? I mean, you can't really go wrong with either guy, but I mean, which way do they go? I guess we found out.
Yeah, they definitely want to stick with, and I think I like Lashley in the world champion role. I think he definitely fits it, and given his background, they kind of worked in his mixed martial arts background tonight by having members of American Top Team come out with him. He's still an active mixed martial artist with Bellator. He still fights at heavyweight for that promotion on Spike. So he's still active there. So they mixed that in, and then they had Alberto's dad, Dos Caras, at ringside, and there was some okay stuff. I guess my one gripe, Trey, with this company, whether you want to call it TNA, Impact Wrestling, now GFW, whatever, is for some reason, I don't understand why, but the finishes for main events seem to fall so flat with me. I remember many years ago there was a AJ Styles Sting main event, and I can't remember if it was, I think it was a Bound for Glory maybe, many years ago. And like out of nowhere, AJ just like won the match and the match was over. And the one thing the WWE does really good, not always, I mean, sometimes there'll be a finish that just comes out of nowhere and everyone's shocked and surprised, but they know how to build to that finish. And I don't know if it's the audience they're performing in front of, the reaction it gets. When Alberto did that little chest stomp thing to Lashley in the corner, all of a sudden it was just, the match is over, Trey, and that's it. And it just, I don't know, it fell really flat for me. And I don't know if it would have been any better. You know, I don't think there would have been much of a difference if Lashley had won either. But did that fall flat for you? Because it really fell flat for me.
And I'll explain why. And here's the thing. I asked Jeff Jarrett this question either in an interview on the show or in person. I can't remember. But I remember, I think it was in person at like the Asylum back in the Nashville days. But I remember saying, you know, the question, and it's not word for word, but it was, and I won't have Jarrett's answer word for word basically. But it was along the lines of, what do you do for allotted pay-per-view time? What do you do? What happens? I was just curious. You know, we were just backstage bullshitting. It wasn't an interview setting. It was just me asking a legit, don't know, never been in that business, don't know question.
Yeah.
And I remember him saying, brother, that's one thing you don't do in this business. You don't go overtime because they charge you out the ass.
Yeah.
And fine you for going overtime. So I'm thinking that because, and again, with the ending of the main event, I remember, and I hated this. I didn't realize it was going to lead to the ending. I didn't realize it was going to lead to the finish. But if you remember how that went down, El Patron kicked Lashley in the back of the head while he was occupied with Alberto's dad outside the ring.
Yeah.
So Alberto kicks him. He should have momentum-wise fallen forward, and he didn't. He turned and then hung on the ropes. Then when Alberto brought him back in the ring, he was trying to balance on that second rope so that top rope. And I remember thinking, God, that just looked so unnatural.
It did,
so forced. And then to use that to be the finish, I think that's what got everybody going, what the fuck?
Yeah,
that was the gasp. That was the what? After all this? I mean, Don West brought up a good point when King Mo grabbed the chair. He was like, this has been a great match. Don't ruin it like this. And he was right. It had been a decent match up until that point.
Yeah.
But the way that Lashley just fell on that rope, turned, caught himself, and then tried to balance his big ass on that second rope. It's hard for a big guy like that to do.
Yeah.
He's trying to balance on that second rope so that foot stomp comes off clean.
Yeah.
And it just looked unnatural and forced. And I think that's why when it led to the finish, you're left going,
okay.
Oh, that wasn't good.
No, it wasn't. It was weird. I didn't like it. So, but that's just kind of what you get from this company. And that's it was like a reminder. It's like, oh yeah, I'm watching a TNA show. Like,
can I give you the example here to compare that to?
Sure.
That is like Shawn Michaels versus Hulk Hogan. When Hulk Hogan hit him with the big boot and Shawn did the extra over-exaggerated sell job on the flip, it looked unnatural. It didn't look like an old man that, you know, Hogan's age that can barely get his leg up high enough to kick you anyway would cause that kind of damage and make you flip several times.
Yeah. Just kind of all of a sudden, boom.
I'm saying that's why. I'm just saying, in my opinion, that's why when I saw that, I went, oh, that's not good.
No, that didn't look good.
And then there's the finish. And so now you're left going, oh, that's not good. And that's the finish. Oh, that was bad.
Yeah, I didn't like it. But overall, I mean, I can't sit here and bitch too much about stuff like that, but that was a little awkward. But outside of that though, pretty good show tonight. Do you want to?
I don't like doing a lot of ratings or.
I don't do ratings. Yeah.
Rating things, but I would say out of a 5-star, 5 being the best, I'd give it a 4. I thought it was entertaining as shit. But you gotta again remember, I haven't watched in a year and a half. I haven't watched wrestling period in 6 months. So to sit down with a very fun chat,
yeah,
and to watch wrestling again, knowing that we had to do this tonight, I enjoyed it.
53% of people gave it a thumbs up on our Wrestleview poll almost immediately after the show ended. So it's getting positive feedback for the people. I did get some, as I was tweeting thoughts, as what we do now on the @Wrestleview account. people were going like, well, do you know there's a New Japan show on New Japan World? It's like, well, yeah, but you have to be a subscriber to see that. Granted, this was a $40 show.
I don't give a shit.
Well, the thing is, the night before they had a live New Japan show on Access TV. It was the first show stateside. It was in Long Beach, California. It was Cody Rhodes and Okada main eventing. But obviously, New Japan is growing in popularity with the popularity of the Bullet Club, and Cody Rhodes is there now. And there's just there's a pocket of wrestling fans that are very intrigued by New Japan. But I was curious, like, why. I mean, I will say this, Trey. Last night, my Twitter feed was filled with people giving thoughts on the New Japan show. I was shocked because a lot of people don't get Access TV anymore, unless they got it through like a Sling service. I know you can get it on Sling TV, and maybe people signed up for free to see the show live. But I thought it was interesting to see the feedback, and to TNA's credit or Impact's credit, whatever. They were trending not worldwide, but in the United States tonight. So there was interest in the show tonight. So there was that, and that's a step in the right direction for this company, because for so long, so many people just ignored them, thought it was irrelevant. So it was good to see some kind of buzz, even though it's a Sunday night in July. It was good to see some buzz, some chatter on Twitter, because that's not the best barometer, but it's a good idea and an indication that people are tuning in and watching the show live. So I thought that was a good sign. Do we want to open phone lines? Because I know people have complained that we don't take phone calls on these shows. I'll open them.
Not at all.
Okay, so I'll open up the phone lines if people want to call. It is 217-909-2447 if you want to give us a phone call. So phone lines are open. If you have a thought, if you want to bitch, if you want to complain, maybe. I don't know if I should encourage that, Trey, but if you want to call in and talk to us about Slammiversary or anything else, by all means. But I was with you, though, Trey, where I thought, this was my first live show from them in a long time, and I was curious to see what it was. And I wrote on our Facebook page that on the Trey and Adam Show Facebook page, which Nora, it was pointed out to me, that we're doing a Wrestleview live show that gets posted on the Trey and Adam Show Facebook page. I understand the confusion. We're going to look into that. But I was surprised at how much I was enjoying the show. But a lot of that too was like for instance, like that opener, I really had no idea who I was watching. It was just lots of flips, a lot of stuff moving around. I didn't really know who I was watching, but I was trying to sit there and enjoy it with an open mind, and maybe that's for the better,
Yeah.
Right. If you take that much of a break from wrestling, maybe that's a good thing too.
And that's what I was getting at was, I gave it a 4 out of 5. Maybe if I'd been watching for the last year and a half, I wouldn't have, because I'd have known what was going on and what to expect, and had a vested interest. Going into it blind and just going, all right, well, I know the history. Catch me up on today. It made it a lot more entertaining and a lot more enjoyable for me, for sure.
Absolutely. Let's go to the phone lines. Area code 347. You are on Wrestleview Live. What do you got for us?
What's going on, fellas? Clint Bowman here.
It's CJ Bowman. How are you, sir?
Man, how I've been? Shoot, overworked and underpaid. That's how I feel.
So did you, I saw you were tweeting about New Japan, so I thought you were watching that show versus this show, but did you see any of this show tonight?
I was watching both at the same time.
Okay.
So it was me and a couple of the boys were just watching both at the same time. We started watching Slammiversary first. Honestly, for for people that know me, they know that I'm not the biggest fan of Impact Wrestling. Like, a lot of what they've done, like, I'm one of the many people that have made fun of it. I'm all on board the whole let's laugh at TNA bandwagon. But at the same time, this show was actually pretty solid.
Yeah, I think that was kind of the vibe we got. No, that was the vibe we got too. Is like we were sitting here going like, I think you're in the same boat as us. We're not weekly viewers of Impact Wrestling. This was the first live pay-per-view I've watched for them in many, many years. But I can't sit here and tell you that it was terrible. I don't by any means think it was terrible. I mean, there was some stuff. I didn't really like the Full Metal Mayhem match too much. I thought that was too brawly and weird. I was a little disappointed with the X Division match. And the opener, I just didn't really know what I was watching. I mean, I love the LAX entrance. I thought that the production they do for that is awesome. but I just didn't know a lot of these guys, so it was just a lot of dudes.
You mean you didn't care for Agent 47 versus the Indian guy from Mike Tyson's Punch Out?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. No, I was like, you cut out a little bit. I was like, yeah, a lot of what I was expecting, and this is just from a personal tip, you know, like I saw the intro to the first match of the show, and I was like, okay, what's Lucha Rules? They didn't really explain it. So I kind of tuned out because then I also I was watching, like I said, New Japan was on at the same time. So I was just flipping back and forth between both because I wasn't too invested. I think the match that I was really invested the most in was Matthews versus Borash.
Yeah.
Just because of like, so I know it's me and myself and Mace just watching it, and we're looking at it, and all of a sudden we turn around, flip back from New Japan, and you see all of this going on. And it's like, wait, why are they going backstage?
Yeah.
And literally, Steiner starts yelling, fat asses.
Fat asses.
We just loses laughing the entire time. It was just this shark boy. It's like you said, like it's just a lot of crazy stuff that was happening. But it put a genuine smile on my face. So unlike the whole House of Horrors experiment, this was actually enjoyable.
Yeah, they you know, Trey kind of took the words out of my mouth. I got a little hesitation when I saw them all of a sudden transition to a pre-tape backstage thing, but as it progressed and I stuck with it, I okay, this was actually pretty funny and pretty good. And
which is funny because it's the one thing on the card going in when I read the card today that I was like, whatever. Yeah,
it was not on your radar, and then all of a sudden you see the execution of it, and then it turns out to be pretty good. So. Yeah, I mean there was stuff like that had bright spots and, you know, turned out to be really, really good. And so overall, man, I'm kind of with you. I mean, obviously it wasn't the greatest pay-per-view I've ever seen in my life, but for a promotion that I don't pay super, super close attention to in terms of watching the show, like I watch YouTube clips, I'll watch stuff on Twitter and Facebook, but you know, for a promotion I've been largely disengaged with for many years now, it was actually really good. I enjoyed it. So I agree.
Indeed.
I agree, sir. Well, thank you for the phone call, CJ. We appreciate it, man.
No problem. Enjoy the rest of your evening.
All right, man. Got any plugs?
What? Say again?
Got any plugs? Plug something? I know you're into the gaming stuff.
If you're in the video gaming geek culture, nerd culture, make sure you check out www.theouthaven.net. We've been over the last 2 weeks, and it ain't over because San Diego Comic-Con is coming up. We've been covering E3, Anime Expo. We're going to San Diego Comic-Con. It's a crazy summer for us, man.
Nice.
So many different games.
Awesome.
So many different stuff coming out.
I could have swore Adam said, "You got any porn?"
That's
an odd thing to ask.
I'm overwhelmed. I'm overwhelmed, but it's actually really enjoyable. Plus, you know, I just picked up my HD 60 Pro, and you know, we're doing more video game more like let's plays and playthroughs and all that stuff. So.
Yeah, we gotta
just like build it upon.
We gotta hook up on that because I just picked one up too. So we should do some let's plays. That'd be fun. I'd enjoy that.
Oh yeah, definitely. Like I know you play Overwatch, so we can jump on that. I can actually jump back on that for the first time in a while.
Awesome. Let's do that. All right. Well, thanks, man. We appreciate it.
All right, no problem. Peace out.
All right, CJ Bowman calling in on the line again. If you want to call in, 217-909-2447. We'll flash that up on the screen if you want to give us a phone call and talk a little bit. I keep seeing repeated chatter saying, well, it's a bad pay-per-view, not a bad, like, well, okay. It's like, I guess I had my expectation level so low tonight, Trey, that like they would have had to have really shit. Because like, and I said this, like, I thought the Full Metal Mayhem thing with Davey Richards and Angelina Love and Eddie Edwards and his wife, I didn't think that was very good. It was just a lot of people doing, when it gets too goofy. So I guess the problem was we just saw Borash and Matthews go through thumbtacks, and then the next match they're pouring thumbtacks into the mouth of Eddie Edwards, and it's like, you gotta, did that not get translated in the planning procedure? Like, you know, you're gonna have back-to-back matches with thumbtacks, and you gotta cool that shit down a little bit. You gotta, I don't know. I thought that was a weird choice to
It's
have.
like in the DJ business. You know, you want to play music all night. You want to keep the dance floor packed, but you don't want to keep it packed all night. You want to play what I call a cool down song, which is a good song that you might want to listen to, but not necessarily dance to, because those people have to leave the dance floor in order to go buy drinks.
Yeah. Makes sense.
So same thing with wrestling. You got to have a cool down, man. You got to have a, you know,
calm it down.
the show better.
Yeah, chill out. I saw in the chat someone asked you, would this make you want to tune into the show anymore? I think Daniel said that, and you said at the age of 42 years old, absolutely not.
No, I have no desire to be a full-time wrestling watcher again. Until you messaged me about coming on here, I wouldn't have watched this. I wouldn't have,
Are you happy you watched it, or did it?
Oh yeah, I'm glad I did. It was a nice trip down memory lane. Like I said, the Fight.tv experience was amazing. I never in a million years would have thought watching a TNA pay-per-view on a wrestling website that has a chat would be as enjoyable as it was. But it was. It really was. It was fun. The problem with me being back into full-time wrestling again is...
I'm sorry, you cut out. Repeat.
I'm thinking.
You're thinking. Okay. I was like, that was a long pause.
I'm not going to say I know everything, because I don't. But I mean, I've seen pretty much everything. B, maybe it's because I'm older and I've got other things to do that I just don't care as much.
Well, there was an interesting article. I can't remember the website, or I think it was like Chris Cruz. I think he used to be in WCW. He wrote this article that basically asked the question: is America falling out of love with wrestling? And yes. I don't know if you saw that or not. That kind of made the rounds a little bit. And
no, I didn't see it, but I will answer him. Yes.
And I think that there's, to a degree, like you saw like the territory days well up into the 80s. But then, like in the 80s, it got very mainstream with Hulk Hogan, and then it kind of got quiet again in the early 90s to mid 90s, and then we saw the Attitude Era boom, and we saw it hit this level in the late 90s that it's just probably never going to hit again. And then it went back down again, and then you had TNA kind of show up, and some I wouldn't even really call it competition, but an alternative because of WCW and ECW going out of business. So there's been this like lull for the last, I guess you could even count it down to the last 15 years where the WWE really struggled to, find itself, and they tried, doing different brands and then getting rid of that and then going back to it, starting a network. I don't know. There's just, maybe people are just like, wow, I've had enough of this. And I've seen it.
Think of it like this. Think of it like this. What was it, 100 years before the Cubs won a World Series?
Yeah.
The Cubs went out last year and won the World Series. Now, you take all those Cubs fans and you take all the new Cubs fans, because anytime a team wins a championship, there's going to be bandwagon fans. Gold State. Anytime a team wins a championship, they automatically inherit a fucking multitude, a metric shit ton of new fans. Okay? So let's say the Cubs win the World Series last year. Now you've got all the Cubs fans ready for this season. And it's been 100 years of bad baseball, but now all of a sudden they've got a world championship and they're excited. And you've got all these new Cubs fans. And then in 2017, Major League Baseball announces that they've gotten rid of every team on baseball but the Cubs. How's that work?
Yeah.
Now they don't have anybody to play against. Well, now that's going to be boring shit. And then you find out that after 100 years of watching the Cubs, that it was scripted, and the Cubs were supposed to lose for 100 years so that when they did finally win, it was worth the wait, and that the pitchers were actors, and then you find out that they're the only team out there now. You can't watch them play anybody. Don't you think the ratings would drop and the fan base would go to shit?
Yeah, that makes sense. In the chat, I'm seeing some comments, and HRB1234 said I'd say all entertainment is struggling. There's so much choice and so many options right now. Daniel said, honestly, if it wasn't for the WWE Network, I'd probably dropped off a long time ago. The product coming out right now is not worth the old pay-per-view prices. May said, I've started expanding into other promotions as I'm sick of WWE. Lots of wrestling out there to watch if you go hunting. And it's true because, like, I know you said you personally don't care enough. But like New Japan having its first live special on Access TV, that's a good step in the right direction for that product to really jump into the United States market with Jim Ross on commentary. Like Jim Ross was doing live commentary of that show on Saturday night on Access TV along with Josh Barnett. You have Ring of Honor really starting to take off and present more pay-per-views, but they're doing it through the Fight TV promotion that we watched the pay-per-view on tonight. There's tons of independent promotions now, Trey, that are doing live specials through a service called FlowSlam. There's been a digital shift with the advent of the network from the WWE, but there's also a lot of wrestling out there as well. So it could be that maybe we're approaching it in a different way. But I do understand what you're saying in terms of I am not as engaged into wrestling as I was 15 years ago.
I don't understand. Wrestling's like heroin. It's out there. You get it. It's going to make you sick, and you're going to hate yourself after you do it, but you're going to go back and get some more.
But I also think, wouldn't you agree, maybe, and you can enlighten me here, I know that I watch wrestling different now than I did 15 years ago when I did Wrestling News Live with you and JSK. Like, I listened back to some of the old Wrestling News Live shows when we were uploading them to the SoundCloud account, and I was embarrassed by some of the stuff I said, and I went, wow, I really watched wrestling in a kind of a goofy way. So I know I watch it now totally different than I did back then. So I don't take it maybe as seriously as I think I took it way too seriously at one point. Goose said, I don't really think you would watch if you didn't work for Wrestleview, Adam.
I was just getting ready to say, if you didn't have to watch wrestling for Wrestleview stuff, you wouldn't watch it.
I think what I would be doing is I would be diving in from an a la carte perspective where I would watch stuff on YouTube for sure. Like, I would want to see what's going on. But I can tell you right now, and I have no qualm saying this, I do not watch Raw live every Monday night. I watch highlights on YouTube. I'll watch clips on Facebook or Twitter, or I'll fast forward through a Hulu thing, but that's it. I cover SmackDown live for the website, so I'm watching SmackDown consistently every Tuesday night. Of course, I'll be dialing in when I have to cover a pay-per-view for Wrestleview. But I've had a lot of people say this to me that know me from Wrestleview, or I know in my personal life, they'd say, I wonder if you would still be watching that if you had a responsibility with Wrestleview. And I can't say I would disagree and say that I would be watching religiously, because I probably wouldn't. But I'm also, I'm getting older in life. I have different priorities in life. And there's honestly, I mean, just think about our entertainment options, Trey. Like, we're both big into gaming. I probably would have preferred to have played a couple hours of Siege and Battlegrounds tonight instead of watch TNA, but I wanted this opportunity to sit down with you and watch the show because we were so entrenched into TNA since it started 15 years ago that I thought this would be a perfect opportunity to kind of have a little nostalgia and get back on here and have a conversation and give some thoughts. And we had a lot of nostalgia tonight with the show, and then we had the introduction of some new characters and some new wrestlers, but for the first time in a while, I was very excited to watch wrestling because I had really watched a live show in a while, and of course, getting to do something with you was awesome as well.
Well, and like I told you today when we were messing around on the sound check thing, I was like, if it wasn't for this show, I'd be playing. I can't believe I'm going to say this, but I'd be playing Call of Duty Ghosts.
Yeah, cockadookey.
That's what I was going to do because it's backwards compatible on the Xbox One now. So I downloaded it, put it in this weekend. I played a few rounds. I was like, oh man, I forgot how much fun this was. I won't play it for long, but 3 or 4 rounds in a row and go, okay, I'm good. And then, but like, on as far as watching wrestling goes, I will read what's on the Facebook group. I will read what's on Twitter. And if something happens that piques my interest, I will seek out said clip. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, I'll go weeks without seeing anything wrestling related.
And you'll be fine with it, right? Because it just doesn't.
If I'm not, doing something with work or with family or working out, if I'm sitting at home just killing time, I'm watching Twitch.
Yeah. No, I am too, and I'm watching gamers on YouTube, on Twitch. I even turn on Twitch streams when I go lay down in bed. Oh, I do too. That's how I go to bed now, is I watch people on Twitch playing games that I like, and I'm the same way. I mean, I've gone away from cable and satellite, so I have Roku's in all my rooms, so I'd rather turn on YouTube or Twitch than, cable television. So I've totally changed how I approach content now. Mace brought something interesting up, Trey, and I'm curious what you think about this. He said, for him, it's not so much watching shows, it's chilling with friends and just talking crap and cracking jokes that keep me going with wrestling in general these days. So for him, it's a kind of like a social thing where you get together, people are going to be talking on our Facebook group, or people will be talking on Twitter. He knows that, maybe there's a possibility that there's going to be maybe a live podcast. So you get together and, there's kind of like a gathering of wrestling fans, which is basically what we did for Wrestling News Live for so many years. We'd be live after every WWE and TNA pay-per-view. So there was kind of like a gathering of the wrestling fan masses. So I get where he's coming from with that. I totally agree with that too, of kind of from a social perspective, just getting together people that are wrestling fans that you have fun with and just watch some wrestling and chill out.
Like if tonight would have been a WWE show, granted, I mean, if you'd asked me to help you host the post show, I'd have jumped on it and said, yeah, sure, no problem. But the biggest thing to me was the nostalgia of it being TNA Slammiversary, 15 years. You got to throw in the fact that the Jarrett regime is back. That's fresh still. That's new to me. So I wanted to see what kind of stamp they were going to put on the show tonight. And that was the biggest part of it to me, was knowing that, we were going to come on afterwards and talk about it. So I at least better watch and know what I'm talking about. Okay, well, now I got to watch. Do I want to watch? And then, like I said, if it was a WWE thing, maybe I wouldn't have wanted to have watched as bad.
Sure.
Not saying that I would prefer TNA over WWE or Global Force, whatever. But the nostalgia thing was the big thing for me tonight.
Yeah.
Other than that, I probably wouldn't have been as interested.
It was 100% nostalgia with me, so I totally agree with you on there. I mean, that was kind of the selling point of the show anyway.
JSK was still around and we were watching together. That's different. I don't have anybody to watch with here at my house. Nobody here cares. I don't have any friends that even watch in my everyday life.
I'm kind of in the same boat. I mean, I have like one or two friends that are still actively paying attention to wrestling, but yeah, for the most part, they're all checked out, dialed out, don't care. And I don't know.
Trust me, I can find a lot more. I can find a lot more other things to do with my time than watch wrestling.
A lot of people could, but overall, I enjoyed the nostalgia factor of tonight. Will that make me want to watch Bound for Glory in October? I don't know, maybe, but we'll see how it goes. But I'm more curious about this transition to getting away from the TNA Impact branding and going towards this Global Force Wrestling and maybe utilizing footage and content, but really kind of saying, well, this is different. We're going in a new direction
as
now.
As JSK would have said, they're no matter what they do from here on out, they're always going to have the TNA stank on them.
Oh, absolutely. And I think that's the one problem too, is you can change the name, but people are always going to call it TNA. And I think there was even moments too, like where Robert Flores was referring to Lashley as the TNA champion. And I'm sure they were like, oh, like he's the Impact champion, and
and then he also called the Masterpiece
Chris
Masters all night, and then Alberto's finishing move was the armbreaker.
Yeah, the armbreaker, exactly. So there's gonna be slip ups and mistakes and stuff, and I think it's just a matter of training the people. But I don't know.
But with that being said, even with those flubs, I'd still much rather see Don West and Flores as the commentating team. And what I really wanted to see, and I brought this up in the chat, if only for one night, if only for one effing night, I would have liked to have seen Mike Tenay come down and call the main event of tonight's pay-per-view with Don West.
That would have been kind of fun. And there was a Mike Tenay reference by Robert Flores tonight on commentary. So I saw a report, and maybe I'm giving it too much credence by even mentioning it, but apparently he was invited to call the show and he declined. I don't know if that's actually true or not, but that was something I saw.
Hope it's not for health reasons.
I hope not too, but it would have been cool to see him or at least bring him out there, save him for the main event. That would have been kind of cool, just to get the nostalgia.
So Kyle Val got a kick out of that, and Goosey brought up in the chat room. Did Don West ever drop the Jim Mint 10 line? And I did drop that line tonight when I was talking to SoCal Val. I said, "You're Jim Mint 10," and she was like, "That's fucking funny." That's
what everybody remembers him by. That's the Don West trademark. All right. Well, like I said, thought it was a good show tonight. This was fun to get back because I feel like with how nostalgic this show was, we are also doing nostalgia thing here too. Because I mean, we go back to day one with TNA, with Wrestling News Live, and we were so entrenched with that company and went to many live events and interviewed so much talent, and that was just. We were often referred, well, you and JSK more so than me, were referred to as TNA whores because that's all you guys wanted to talk about majority of the time, where you would almost be annoyed when you had to do WWE discussion, but it was the more dominant brand, still is to this day, but it just it was different to kind of watch this, and yeah, it was nostalgia heavy. Yeah, there was a lot of stuff on the show that wasn't great, but there was also some other stuff on the show that was really fun. So I enjoyed it. I will say I don't feel like I wasted my Sunday night. I don't feel like I didn't have to force myself to be here. I thought this was a good time. So
I enjoyed it. It was good.
I will disagree with the haters. I will give it a thumbs up tonight. I will give it a
I don't know. I mean, the more I read about people hating on it too, reminds me of another reason why I don't miss wrestling.
Yeah, that's not fun. Still there.
You know, because I'm like, God, really? You're still doing this shit? You're still talking shit? I mean, you just can't just watch something and go, oh, well, fuck it, whatever.
People are angry. It's a lot of sexual frustration, Trey. That's what I always go back to.
So it's like Mike Man says when he's streaming and somebody gets pissy in chat and says something stupid. It's like, you know, you could have just left.
Yeah, you could just.
But no, by God, you must hear my negative opinion before I go, because I, for the love of God, cannot just hit X and go to another stream.
They love the attention. That's all they get. They love the attention. We're getting some names from the past been dropped in the chat room. Someone dropped an Internet Dave reference. They dropped a Mark the Shark reference. So that's some old, what was that, Wrestle Talk Radio, all those people back in the day. So back in the day.
TNA is dead. Global Force Wrestling will have a hard time finding an audience. Way too much change in just a short period of time. Where have you been? TNA's been nothing but change since the day it started.
I will, in that they need to.
They're already getting ready to sell to another company right now. They're probably making a deal right now to sell to somebody else.
They need to get the fuck off Pop TV, and I think they know that. So.
Oh, yeah.
Once that goes away, I think they'll be in better. I don't know if there's going to be anybody interested, though. That's the other problem. And
man, who are the suitors going to be? I mean,
I really think
to get in the wrestling bed?
With all the streaming stuff we were talking about, I really think it would be interesting if they did do live streaming to like YouTube, to Twitch, maybe get like a Netflix deal, a Hulu deal. I don't know. I mean, I don't know if you can survive off that single entity. Like maybe you do need some form of television licensing and distribution somewhere, but then you take that and you put it, you know, somewhere where you know people are. Like, you know, people are on YouTube, you know, people are on Twitch, you know, people are on Netflix and Hulu and all these outlets. So I don't know. Yeah. I don't know what that would be.
Do I still want Velvet's bathwater? Not now that Bully Ray's been dicking in it. No, I'm good.
He's been. I was just gonna say something really bad, but I'll
now that Bully Ray has put his toe in the pool to check the temperature of the water, I'm good. I don't even.
I was gonna say that while he's been stirring the water with his dick, that yeah, Trey wants nothing to do with it. So I also.
And don't get me wrong, I'm not super cool wrestling trolley fan that goes, oh my God,
yeah,
her character is so gross, I wouldn't fuck her.
Oh my God,
yeah, I'd fuck her.
I like that voice. That should be your new voice. For the internet wrestling fan. Like, could that be the new one?
That always just bugged me. That always bugged me.
Yeah.
Fucking Cheeto eating fucking wrestling fan.
Fucking Cheeto pieces of shit.
I wouldn't fuck Lita. She's a whore.
I know.
Whatever, dude.
Well, it's a lot of keyboard warriors out there. So
give me a fucking break.
They all have a Twitter where it's not their real image and their real name because they're scared. That's usually what it is. So
they used to just crack my shit up. I would rather stay home with my 400-pound girlfriend that needs to shave her fucking armpits and shower once in a while, but I would never fuck that hot fucking wrestling chick. No fucking way, because her character is a whore.
Sexual frustration, Trey. It's what it all leads back to. All roads lead to sexual frustration in the internet wrestling community.
Something leads to something. I don't know.
All it is. It's all it is. Yeah. All right. We're going to get the hell out of here. We will be back a week from tonight to cover, I cannot believe I'm about to say this, Trey, but there is a pay-per-view next Sunday called Great Balls of Fire. Not joking.
Oh, my God. And it's from the WWE of all things.
Yeah, it's the Raw brand. So that's going to be Brock Lesnar versus Samoa Joe, which is interesting because I do remember a long time ago, and I can't remember if it was on a Christmas Craptacular show or it was a prominent show, I felt like, where you were talking about the scenario of Samoa Joe versus Batista. And this feels very similar to that with Brock Lesnar, homegrown WWE guy versus, he still is going to be a TNA guy to me, Samoa Joe. I'm looking forward to the match. I'm not looking forward to having to say Great Balls of Fire repeatedly a week from tonight, but that I'm intrigued to see that main event. I think that's
if they don't get Jim Ross to fucking cut the audio for Great Balls of Fire, Great Balls of Fire, they're fucking up.
Well, he's under contract again, but he's not doing commentary for those. They're considered those B shows, those brand shows. But he'll probably do bigger shows. But I'm looking forward to that though. Just the whole, it's like Godzilla versus King Kong with Samoa Joe and Brock Lesnar. I'm looking forward to it. But
yeah.
So we'll be here next week to talk about that show, everybody, and I'm sure there'll be plenty of people complaining on Twitter and Facebook and YouTube, and so something.
You have fun with that.
Something to look forward to. I will, Trey. I promise. I will.
Bork Laser and Mimosa Joe.
Who said Bork Laser and Mimosa Joe? Oh, Mace did. Okay.
Well, Mace said Bork Laser. I just added the Mimosa Joe.
Mimosa Joe. He said Samosa Joe, but I like Mimosa Joe a little bit better.
Or Camosa Joe.
Bork Laser versus Mimosa Joe. That's going to be the line of week. I like that.
I just see, Samoa Joe's big, mean, tough guy ass drinking a mimosa with his pinky out. Mimosa Joe.
like Sienna. Exactly. Do you have any parting shots, sir, before we close this up?
Fuck everybody.
Fuck everybody. That's all you're gonna say. That's so.
That's
rude.
Really don't. I mean, it was fun. I just, I'm glad I don't have to do this all the time because I just don't like wrestling anymore.
That is the best.
And the sad thing is,
yeah, go ahead.
The main reason why I don't care so much for wrestling is because I always had this saying my whole life. I may have imparted this wisdom upon you at one point. Maybe not. If I didn't, now's your chance. So get ready. Write this down. I've always been a kind of person that if I thought I had a job where I was smarter than my boss, I quit because I couldn't take it. I just couldn't do it. When I could come up with better storylines after not watching it for months at a time than what people that are getting paid to do that can come up with, that's when I check out. And that's 1,000% the biggest part of it. That, and I say that as big a part of it as the wrestling itself.
Okay. So I need to be smarter than Paul, is what you're saying.
Smarter than Paul.
Yeah.
I mean,
well, maybe, right?
You take that how you want to take that. I'm not going to incriminate you.
Are you saying you feel smarter than WWE creative, so therefore it's not interesting to watch anymore?
Like I said, I could come up with magic ink pen stories that are better than the shit they're coming up with.
I don't disagree with you. It's not the most intriguing show to be watching every week. I mean, SmackDown is in a weird world, but yeah.
Again, this goes with the trolley wrestling fan, because there's going to be somebody listening that goes, well, how the fuck are you going to come up with better storylines? You don't work for the company. You don't know. Well, you're right. I don't. And that makes it hypocritical because now I'm becoming the douchey wrestling fan. And by saying that is you don't have to deal with tracks, the creative control, the other bullshit.
Yeah.
You're right. I don't have to do all that. If I did, then yeah, maybe I wouldn't be able to write as good or better storylines. So I don't know. I just know that when I'm watching a movie, if the movie sucks, I don't go see the sequel. Just the way it is.
You're depressing me.
I don't continue to watch.
You're depressing me because I also realize as we're closing up the show that I will be recapping Monday Night Raw tomorrow night for 3 hours on Wrestleview.com.
Woo-hoo.
So yeah, that's going to be a fun way to spend a July 3rd. So yay. It's going to be a good time, everybody. So join me for coverage on Wrestleview.com tomorrow if you so desire. Trey just had pretty much the best parting shots I think I've ever heard on a podcast before, so I have no desire to follow that up. So I'm going to close this up by saying we will be here a week from tonight.
We won't.
Well, you won't. I'll be here with Douglas.
You will. I won't be. No.
We'll be talking about Bork Laser versus Mimosa Joe a week from tonight here
Mimosa
on YouTube.
Joe. Just take that with you. Just know when you go home tonight that I left you that little nugget.
Okay. I like it.
Of Alexa Bliss is a bitch.
Bork Laser versus Mimosa Joe. So? I'm going to keep that with me deep down inside. All right, everybody. We're going to get the fuck out of here. Wrestleview Media on SoundCloud and iTunes if you want the audio version of this podcast. Search Wrestleview or search Wrestleview Radio on YouTube. Of course, you can subscribe. That helps us. It lets you know when we are live or when we add a video to the channel. And then, of course, we have the Trey and Adam Show Facebook page for a podcast that no longer exists. We might have to rebrand that, but for now it's called the Trey and Adam Show, and you can look it up on Facebook and send a request and be part of the shenanigans that we've talked about on this podcast as well. So
Audio Revolver says, but you watched the Impact pay-per-view, though. The sequel analogy sucks if you watched Global Force Wrestling Slammiversary. I don't know who you are. I don't give a fuck who you are.
This is Angry Trey.
You're not going to lose any sleep over if you ever tune into this show or this podcast or that Facebook group ever again.
Well,
but I will tell you this.
I want them to listen to me.
Had you been listening from the beginning of the show, you would have heard the fact that Adam and I wanted to do this solely for the nostalgia of the fact that we used to do it back when you were still getting lunch money from your parents, so you could get an extra slice of pizza and a milk that you had to get somebody to help you open in the cafeteria.
He's laughing.
That's why we did it.
He's laughing. He or she. I don't know if it's he or she, but they're laughing. So
yes, I will admit, watching Impact Wrestling, Global Force Wrestling, TNA, the Owl Network, whatever, and their version of tonight's pay-per-view doesn't lend itself to the theory of if it sucks, don't watch it. But there was a reason why we did it tonight.
Yeah.
Hence the same reason I'm saying I won't be doing it next weekend. Thanks for stopping by.
Thanks for stopping by, everybody. I'm Trey Dawg. He is at Trey on the radio if you want more of this ranting on the Twitter, so find him on there. I am at Adam Wrestleview on Twitter, and of course follow at Wrestleview on Twitter as well. Wrestleview.com, all that wonderful stuff. We will see you a week from tonight for the Great Balls of Fire, Bork Laser, Mimosa Joe, Dallas, Texas, July 9th, 2017. Get fucking hype.
Like that? Can you say it like Bork Laser and Mimosa Joe? You gotta go like Bork Laser and Mimosa Joe.
And Mimosa. Is that how I said it in your head? Do I make Mimosa?
No, but you gotta say it that way.
I have to say. Oh, so you want me to say Brock's name scary, and then you want me to say Samoa Joe's very not scary.
Right. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So yeah. Bork Laser, Mimosa Joe.
The pay-per-view Great Balls of Fire.
Okay. Like
now
that.
Put it all together.
Okay. So week from tonight, July 9th, Dallas, Texas. Bork Laser, Mimosa Joe. How was that? I said where it was. At Dallas, Dallas, Texas.
No, but what's the name of the pay-per-view?
Great Balls of Fire. Is that good? You think somebody will use that?
Great girthy balls of sweaty sack fire.
Have you seen the promo where they're singing the song? Where they're literally, they have lyrics as if you need the lyric sheet.
Are you fucking kidding me?
No, there's a video of the roster singing to the Great Balls of Fire. You know what? Someone made a meme of this. Where
listen, you shake my nerves and you rattle my brain.
Yeah, I play it on here, but they would yank me off YouTube. But there's a video, you can find it. It's the talent roster singing to Great Balls of Fire. Because you know Vince was like sitting in a room. He's like, oh, God damn it. I want to call a show Great Balls of Fire, Paul. And he was just very angry and very adamant. They're like, okay, sure, that's fine. And then they did. So
you have to realize that this is how this played out, okay? Triple H and Stephanie are home for dinner.
Yeah.
And the phone rings.
Yeah.
Triple H gets up, takes his napkin, throws it down on the table, answers a landline. I just envision them still having a landline. I don't know why.
Yeah.
Hunter picks up the landline. Hello? Helmsley residence. Vince on the other end of the phone, and he's like, I've got this great idea.
God damn it, Paul.
The Raw pay-per-view. God damn it, Paul. The Raw pay-per-view is going to be Great Balls of Fire.
Yeah, he was excited about it, very much so.
And Triple H goes, oh, yeah, that is it. That is great. Thank you for calling, Vince. I cannot wait to hang up this phone just so I can tell Stephanie your idea. Let's jump this right into production tomorrow. All right, love you, Dad. Bye. Click. This is what I'm talking about, Stephanie. Your fucking dad is losing his fucking mind.
It's probably very accurate.
And that's how that went down. Pastor Potatoes. That's how that went.
It's very, very possible. Because as soon as that name came out, that's the first thought that went through everybody's mind. It was like, what is happening? But yeah, so Great Balls of Fire, week from tonight. Bork Laser, Mimosa Joe.
Fake news sites. Like it was like the fucking,
the kayfabe count. Yeah, kayfabe news. I know it did on it. The best part was. I'll close with this with you, Trey. There was when they were over in the UK, AJ Styles was being interviewed, and the guy goes, "So what do you think about the fact that they're going to call a pay-per-view Great Balls of Fire?" And he goes, "Wait, what?" And he's like, "Yeah, they're gonna call the Raw pay-per-view Great Balls of Fire in July." And he goes, "Are you serious?" And like even AJ didn't know. So like to see his reaction, he was like, "Well, I'm not on that show anymore." So, And of course, like wrestlers were like Big E was openly joking about it on Twitter. He's like, man, I really missed the boat. I'm on SmackDown now, so I won't have the opportunity to be on Great Balls of Fire. But it was openly being
great.
mocked.
That should happen.
Yes.
That should happen because that's great.
I mean, that's openly mocked.
That's perfect. That's the best thing they could have done.
May said to check your Twitter because he said he sent you the commercial. I would love to play it, but I would just get completely this whole video would just get
I can't wait to fucking like Triple H at the dining room table. I can't wait to hang up the phone fast enough to go check that nugget.
It's gonna be good. You'll enjoy it. You'll smile. You'll laugh. You'll enjoy it. I promise. Okay, we're gonna get the fuck out of here. Next Sunday we'll be here to watch Great Balls of Fire. Trey Dawg, thank you, sir, for jumping in here and talking some nostalgic TNA with me. Impact Wrestling, GFW, whatever it is. Thank you for doing that. I appreciate it. It was fun. We haven't done a podcast in a long time, so I enjoyed it, sir. So thank you.
I mean, I wish we could do more of this about other stuff.
We can definitely do that. We can definitely make that happen. I'll make it happen. Trust me. We'll do something.
Just let me know.
He's at Trey on the radio, as you can see on the graphic there on the Twitter, so give him a follow. I am at Adam Wrestleview on the Twitter, and of course follow at Wrestleview as well. So we will talk to you guys next Sunday. Bork Laser, Mimosa Joe, Great Balls of Fire, everybody.
Mimosa Joe!
All right, we'll talk to you later, guys. Bye.